Hello and welcome back to Podcast with a K. I'm your host Carla with a K, and we are finally back after another unintentional hiatus. But it's a good time to be back. We just crossed a milestone on Twitch where the podcast now records live. If you've been away for a while, if this is your first time tuning back in, the podcast now records live on Twitch and then premieres, of course, at its home on WECS 90.1 FM before launching to all of your preferred podcast listening platforms, whether it's Spotify or YouTube or Apple or Google or whoever has your podcast. You know, maybe you just like to click random links and that's how you found us, or you're watching clips on any social media site. Wherever the case may be, we're back, we're recording, got a bunch of stuff lined up to close the year off right. We are on episode 98. I feel like that means we have to do something special for 100. We'll see. I won't promise anything I can't deliver. So instead, I'll just let you have the suspense build up. And I think that's how we're going to play it from now on. We are going to be doing the second part of the Cactus Blue Motel. You guys really, really liked that, which I'm glad. I feel like, you know, the good thing about Podcast with a K is it's meant to be a conversation, you know, a highlight of whatever topic is cool and trendy at any given moment in time. And we've done a little bit of a lot, you know, we've done interviews, we've done think pieces, we've done music reviews and critiques, and we tried our hands at fiction podcasting. Right now, I'm into fiction podcast. I like to consume fiction podcast. So that's what I've been intrigued by. I've told y'all about Blackout before with Rami Malek. I've told y'all about Bridgewater with Misha Collins. Always on the hunt for something new, which is me right now. But I did find an old favorite thing of mine, which is a text-based story game, choose your own adventure style, really cool, really exciting, really fun, really vibes, called Cactus Blue Motel. We did part 1 last time, we're doing part 2 today, and I feel like it's gonna be a good one. I don't remember much of the story. Our autosave did persist, so I know that this is meant to be, this is meant to happen. So without further ado, we'll get into it, you know? You listened to the... Oh my goodness, I didn't even tell you about the milestone on Twitch. I'm sorry. I gave you all that big little lift of hype, only to not even tell you what's going on. So the podcast records on Twitch now. We have been recording on Twitch ever since the podcast's second semester / season. The podcast started off as my college radio show for extra credit, and at the time the radio station had a video feed, but just kind of into the station, separate from the actual on-air broadcast. All of my friends and all of my family were like, oh, we would just love to watch like a video of you sometimes, you know, in the studio doing your thing. And I was like, oh, well, you know, it's there. And like, no, it's not the same, because like we can't hear you guys' conversations when you do like the music breaks and you guys keep talking about stuff, and then you come back from break and you're like, oh my god, wait, we were talking about, wait, what was it again? Oh, I forgot. It would just be really cool, you know, for those of us to watch the behind the scenes. And so I brought my laptop into the studio and I would set it up on Twitch, just webcam, web mic. That was it. And, you know, COVID happened and everyone wanted the podcast back. We started doing it originally on just YouTube. And then when we came back, we were like, you know what, let's keep it going on Twitch. It's been fun. It was fun. Everyone likes it. And, you know, as I met more people and started interviewing more guests, a lot of people also used Twitch as a platform. So Twitch became a part of the podcast as much as WECS did. And the podcast is what has seen my Twitch channel from the start. The podcast is the reason that I even opened a Twitch account, you know. Everyone wanted a dedicated live streaming platform, because on YouTube, even though there is YouTube Live, people felt more like they wanted to watch the rewind. So I was like, all right, stream on Twitch, rewind on YouTube. Then from YouTube, of course, came posting it on everywhere. I'm topic hopping. The reason any of this is relevant is because yesterday we celebrated having reached 600 followers on Twitch, which means potentially 600 of you listen to the podcast, which is amazing and really cool and really exciting. You know, back at school, I kept a tally for a while of anyone that told me that they listened to the podcast. And I think I lost count around 60 or so, because I was like, that's crazy. To quote one of the homies, 60 people wouldn't even fit in this room right now. So 600 is insane. But yes, we celebrated yesterday with the best way that I know how, testing a new game, playing with the homies, and of course the newfound tradition of doing a cosplay karaoke. I dressed up as Elphaba. If you really want to see, I'll include a link to a photo in the chat down below, in the description, whatever it may be. Otherwise, you can find that on social media, on Twitter, podcastxk, podcast with a K on everything else. That's PODKASTWITHAK. And it was fun. It was very exciting, pushed me out of my comfort zone the same way all of this did. I've always loved talking. Talking is great. Talking is fun. If I ever got in trouble in school, it was for drawing or for talking. And it's, you know, full circle that I would end up here. I was talking about ideal careers before recording this with some friends, and I mentioned that I wanted to be an author. The first realistic thing I ever wanted to be, the first thing I ever wanted to be before I knew what jobs were, was ridiculous. We won't even get into that. But the first real job that I ever wanted was to be an author. I wanted to write. I loved reading. I loved, you know, watching movies and TV shows and reading books and comic books and magazines and short stories. Anything I could consume, I consumed. And I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to tell stories. I would, you know, make my own little personal illustrated books, staple them and send them off. And it was fun. It was a cool little hobby for a while, and then I kind of lost my edge for it. I feel like, you know, when you're a kid and you're doing something and everyone's cheering you on, it's like, wow. And when people stop cheering you on, it's like, well, on to the next thing, I guess. Need more of that hype. And so, you know, I did end up going through different hobbies and different goals and aspirations in life. I've wanted to be everything and anything from author to what I do now, in which I just talk. I ended up studying communications, funny enough, and design. And, you know, we've been doing this for long enough now, about 5 years, that I think it's gotten me in this very like reminiscent perspective of everyone that's been here from the beginning, such as Abby, who just subscribed. Thank you so much, by the way, for 49 months. Or Monk, who is a new chatter, who just won a giveaway yesterday, which is, you know, another full circle type of sentence. And it's cool to have the podcast. Originally, when I, you know, in between my journey of being a kid wanting to be an author and tell stories to now talking to real people and finding out real people's stories, there's been a lot of, well, what about my story, right? And I've always been of the mindset that you are more than your story, right? Like, you are who you are today. Who you've been is important because it leads you to who you are currently, but it's not all that you are, right? It also feeds into, you know, where you're going and what you're doing next. But the only thing that matters in any given moment is you right now. So it's pretty cool to have this to look back on, because, you know, as the technological resources that we have advanced, you know, there's home videos of me as a kid, but whenever I became in charge of my own story, right, like as we've grown up and home videos kind of didn't fade into oblivion, but it's not as common anymore, right? We don't record everything to sit around and watch. Everyone records everything on their phones, but it's a little bit more rare that everyone gets to sit around and watch those videos together. You know, it's mostly now personal memories, but I kind of missed having that element of sharing. So, you know, I went through my little phase where I would record a vlog here, a vlog there, a skit with my friends, put it on YouTube. Cool. On to the next thing. But never anything consistent and cohesive, right? If you want to figure out who I am or who I've been, you can read my Twitter. Twitter has a lot of that type of information. Or you can see my random school projects. I very famously never wanted to make a slideshow or a Prezi or anything. I would always make a video. I loved doing production with my friends. I loved, you know, writing a little script and making a weekend out of it. And it's cool to have those like bits and pieces and snippets of life. But again, it's not something consistent. And I do very much enjoy the fact that the podcast kind of gives us that platform. I think it's one of the coolest things that we've had. And I also get to sit back and listen to conversations that I've had with my best friends. And, you know, that was the original point of the podcast, was to interview all of the new friends I was making in college. And, you know, tell me what the original question set was, what's your zodiac sign? What are you listening to? And what do you care about? That was it. And it sprung from me finding my friends so interesting and wanting to listen to more and asking questions, and someone in the room being like, man, you guys have been talking for hours. You also just started a podcast. Nah, wow, we were fine. We're chilling. And then we did. And it's cool. There's some people who've been on the podcast who, like I just name dropped a couple who I've got the pleasure of keeping in my life. There's some people on the podcast who I talked to once and then never again. And it's cool, you know, it expanded beyond the people in my college, the people in my hometown, the people I'm friends with. I've talked to, you know, singers and songwriters and experts in their fields. Like, I've talked to an amazing assortment of people, some who I've become closer to because of the podcast, and some who I don't think I ever would have met if not for the sake of the podcast. I've gotten jobs because of the podcast. My connection to a radio station also got me, you know, connected with a different community of broadcasters. It's just opened so many doors that I never would have expected for something that sprung up as a project from, you know, I love stories and meeting people and doing new things. So I'm very grateful to be here today. Like I said, it's a very poetic era for yours truly, having reached a new milestone and still having the opportunity to keep doing this, even on WCS, you know, like once I graduated from college, my boss reached out and was like, yo, people are asking about your show. Would you bring it back as a community member? You're going to stay as a community member, right? And I was like, I mean, I guess I have to now. I have to give the people what they want, whether it's 3 people today or 650 tomorrow. If there's one person listening, that's fine. If there's nobody listening, that's not to say no one's going to stumble upon this later on. So again, very grateful, very excited for what the future may bring. I absolutely have so much love for what I get to do and everyone that I get to do it with. I can't imagine doing this in any other lifetime without the people who have made it possible. And by make it possible, I don't mean there's anyone, you know, funding the project or pushing me to do it. I just mean everyone that, you know, sits and listens or talks to me, whether it's in the chat, whether it's as a guest, whether it's, you know, someone who recognizes me walking down a hallway, whatever the case may be. Thank you. And now that I've talked for ever and a day, let's do a quick little music break before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the show. We started off by listening to Defying Gravity by Cynthia, Erivo, and Ariana Grande from the Wicked soundtrack, of course, relevant because, like I said, we celebrated with a cosplay karaoke yesterday. And we're going to listen to next Rift, which is a new song by Good Kid. So stay tuned and enjoy. So that was Rift by Good Kid. Good Kid is on my list of people to interview. I've gotten to shoot them before through Clean Teeth, funny enough, with Abby, the magazine with Abby. But I want to interview them. I got to talk to them after the show, which is really cool, but I didn't want to self-promo like that, which I now recognize in this industry is shooting yourself in the foot. All right, we are doing the part 2 of Cactus Blue Motel. We did part 1 2 episodes ago, so I think I like this format of episode on, off until we finish it. It'll be really fun and really cool, I think. But without further ado, let's get into it. If you're just now tuning in, you're listening to Podcast with a K, and we are here at WCS 90.1 FM or wherever you get your podcasts. So, we are in the lobby of the Cactus Blue Motel. The motel office was an empty square room cut in half by a long counter that separated manager from guest. Behind the cheap faux wood counter, there was a single door marked private. It was slightly open. On my side of the counter, there was a rack of brochures, folded and yellowed by wear and time, and a vending machine, turned off. Lex was somewhere else, exploring. There was a door leading out to the parking lot, lit up by a red vacancy sign, and another out to the first floor rooms. At the single door, Don Achilles sat in his office, blue light streaming in from a window with cheap bent blinds. He grinned and crossed his fingers on the desk. Maria Elena, do you need anything? I did have some questions. How did you end up here? He leaned back, letting out a long sigh. Oh, I can barely remember. They found gold out in California, and I figured I'd make my fortune. Never did make it. How did that end up going? I didn't know much about the gold rush, so I told him what I did. Well, some people got pretty rich. Other people didn't. Isn't that the truth? He said. No, I prefer this much better. The Cactus Blue takes care of herself mostly. Don't even need to charge for the people who decide to stay. I figure it's the least I can do since it's so easy to maintain. She, takes care of herself? I asked. Was the motel alive? He just smiled and shrugged. Misterios, Maria Elena. Some questions can't be answered. How long have you been working here? Oh, maybe 200 years, he said. I sat there, mouth open as he shrugged. Working here has some perks, you know. It lets you keep a much better idea of time than some of the others. I don't regret a minute, though. This place is a gift. How did you end up here? He leaned back, letting out a long sigh. Oh, I can barely remember. What's the deal with the motel? Don Achilles laughed, full-bellied and warm. The deal? Well, I'm no scientist, but the word pocket dimension has floated my way sometimes. But truly, it's what people need it to be. A place to rest, to refuel. Surely you felt it. I nodded. The light of the cactus bloom did feel oddly refreshing. What do you think of the guests? Oh, good people. Just tired people, you know. Well, then there's 201. He's a bit odd, but still good people. This isn't the kind of place where criminals come to rest. It's meant to be a good place. He seemed very sure about that. I didn't have any more questions, but he let me know his door was open to me at any time. The brochures advertise a whole range of places, from diners to drive-ins. My personal favorite was a whole column of ads for different mini-golf courses, including death metal mini-golf, thematically similar but legally distinct Godzilla mini-golf, and French Revolution mini-golf. The tiny guillotine chopping the balls in half was a nice touch. Looking around at the motel now, it was all fuzzy and dreamlike. I figured some of these places might be more real than previously expected. The vending machine was turned off, but it was quite possibly the strangest thing I'd ever seen before. It offered both Coke and Pepsi. Okay, this still might have been one of the weirder things here. A neon flower glowed above the sign that read Cactus Blue Motel. It was unattached to any wires, shifting like a living thing with every breath of desert air. The motel itself was as lively as well on both sides of the lobby, and the side where my rooms were as well. Becky's car was sitting in a spot near the west end of the motel. The beat-up sedan from before was gone, replaced by a bright blue Thunderbird. Dean sat next to his motorcycle, the only one on the lot. Even the highway looked fresher, deeper and darker black. Above the glowing neon cactus sat a living creature of neon. I looked at it as closely as I could, but I couldn't find the structure, the duplicates, anything. The cactus bloom above it was just flowing and growing and shedding beautiful light onto the motel. Bright lights with a blue undertone lit up the first floor walkway. A thin corridor cut between the main building and the motel lobby. A printed paper sign, crisp white-red pool, pointing towards the sound of burbling water. Then the rooms. Room 103 had music, loud but indistinguishable. 102 was vacant. 101 aglow, cherry red through shuttered windows. At the corner, the stairs and a sharp turn to rooms 104 to 110, and out into the night, the parking lot. To the west of the highway was California. To the east, Houston. North was the motel, and the desert sprawled out into the south. No one was coming down this dusty road, especially not me, by myself. Dean looked so at home here. Leaning on his motorcycle, under the cactus bloom, he let out a puff of smoke, like the world's least intimidating dragon, and smiled at me. I guess you still have questions? What's up with the flower? Do I look like a botanist to you? I don't know, it just turns on at night. Brings the whole place back to life. I pursed my lips. That wasn't an answer. How did you end up here? Dean let out a perfect circle of smoke. It highlighted a flickering star, then faded into the night. Long story short, I was trying to get away from my dad. He wants me to take over the family business. Boring. So I decided to go for a drive and, well, you ever think of going back home? Dean laughed. Dad can drag me there himself if he really wants me back. Until then, I'll pass. How long have you been here? Dean smiled, cigarette hanging in his teeth. Oh, since I was 19. He didn't look a day over 20, so I really had to wonder how long he'd been 19. What do you think of the motel? It's my favorite spot on this whole damn earth. That's what I think about it, he said. How come? He shrugged. It just feels right, you know? Outside, the world is all rough edges and blaring lights. Here, everything is fuzzy from the neon. It just feels right. What do you think of the other guests? Dean tilted his head as if I just said something really weird. Which ones? The smoking woman in 210? I let it trail off. Oh, she's great. We smoke together sometimes. On that one night it rains and we can go out into the parking lot. You know she's a divorcee? Ditched her asshole husband and went to start a new life in California as an actress. I tried to imagine what she looked like under the smoke, if she was someone I could have seen in movies. Dean seemed to notice and just nodded. Yeah, she was a looker for a while, but she feels better like that. Also, you know smoking woman isn't her name. Oops. What is it? Dean shrugged. Hell if I know. The band? Oh yeah, great guys. Even if their music is kind of weird. The bassist is my favorite. Does she ever, say anything? I asked. That's what they have the singer for. Duh. What about the man in room 109? Oh, just stay away from that guy, he said with an easy wave. He thinks he's the next big thing, but he actually hasn't written a thing since we got here. Keeps watching the pay-per-view, if you know what I mean. And Don Achilles? The Don is the best thing to happen to this place in a long time. He's a little slow on the uptake, though, sometimes. He only added the new architecture in the 70s. Still, I hear your friend might be helping with that. Maybe, I said. Good. We need some fresh blood, I didn't have any more questions for Dean. Not now. I'd probably be back later, though. I didn't know anything about cars, but I knew this was a nice one. Old, with those classic wings and a stunning blue paint job that seemed to shine from within the neon lights. I reached out and touched the coat of paint lightly. Just wow. I think I finally got why people loved cars. Becky's car seemed shinier under the cactus bloom, though still just as dirty from the long drive to Houston. I walked down the corridor to room 103. The band was sprawled out around the room, plucking at notes, making a formless tune. The bassist waved as I walked by, but no one else did. I didn't have any questions. The singer yelled, "Come jam with us whenever!" The rest of them seemed to agree in their silence. New cars filled the parking lot on the way to rooms 104 to 110. A new life filled the rooms as well. In 109, there were voices, but from a TV. They just didn't sound real. I knocked on the door, and he called for me to come in. Inside the room wasn't what I was expecting. I thought he'd have something wild, all papers and madness, but the place was pristine. The bed was made, there weren't any papers, only the man sitting at his typewriter, facing me. The TV remote was next to him, but hastily and badly hidden. I can see from here that the page was blank. "Oh, welcome back. Did you want to read more pages? I don't have much, but, well, you can't rush art, he said, laughing nervously. I asked him what he thought of the other guests. He wrinkled his nose. Odd sort. The woman smoking out on the balcony has terrible taste in literature, as does the boy in the parking lot. come to think of it, the band does too. Really, the only one with any taste at all is up in 201. Well, I'd never accept a book recommendation from 201 now, that's for sure. I was done asking him questions. Oh yes, well, so much more to write. Do knock any time. You can read my latest drafts. I nodded and walked away quickly. I took the stairs back to the second floor. To the right there were 3 rooms. 203 was vacant. 202, the housekeeping cart was gone. In 201, there was a sign that said, "Do not disturb." Well, I just might. And after that, an ice machine sat in the spot where another room might have once been. I knocked anyway on the door that said, "Do not disturb." There was a rustling, a thump, and a shout. "Doris, for the last time, I don't need the room cleaned." "It's not Doris," I said, already starting to regret this. Oh, damn. The voice inside said. Chains jingled. "You're new, aren't you?" He didn't give me the time to answer as the locks clicked and the door swung open. "Come on in. I have so much to tell you." I walked in, slowly, cautiously. It was dark, sheets thrown over lamps to prevent their full brightness. Papers were scattered over the beds and the floor covered in mad scribbles. On the far wall, maps and photos were pinned to the wall, red string forming a spider web between locations. A picture of Dean was circled 3 times in red pen. Normally, I'd have been weirded out by the paranoia wall, but by then, I'd gotten a good look at who'd opened the door. It was a rabbit. With antlers. I said so, and the rabbit scoffed. "I'm a jackalope, thank you very much. There's a difference." "Yeah, the antlers." The jackalope leapt up onto the bed while giving me the side eye. I didn't know rabbit eyes could do that. "Yeah, I bet you think you're so clever. Well, you ended up here, so ha! Joke's on you." "I'm not that clever," I said. Lex was the clever one. Becky was the smart one. I was there. "Well, of course not. You haven't driven away yet." The jackalope's black eyes burned with a fervor. "Don't you get it? This place is a trap. You need to leave before it's too late." I looked at him in disbelief. Maybe I should have been since the start. "You don't believe me," he said. "See, no one ever believes me, but look, look." He hopped over to the evidence wall, one antler tugging at a long red string. "See, the whole place is a trap. People check in, but they never check out." I squint over at the wall. There are newspapers, some of them older than me, and photos, but nothing that seems decipherable. He must have noticed my confusion because he kept going. "Fine, I'll prove it to you." "How?" I asked, but he was already convincing me just by having put the idea in my head. Pushing daisies isn't that good. Lex could never give up on a schedule. "By showing you how trapped it is. You know phones don't work here. They don't want you reaching the outside world." His nose twitched, and he looked at the door, nervous that we'd be found. "But I still haven't tested the last one. The last phone. It's a payphone, down east by the highway, still in the light of the motel. If I'm right, you could go out there, and it wouldn't let you call." "And if it does?" He already had me, and he knew it. He seemed sure it wouldn't. I was less sure about that, about anything. But now I had to check it out. I knocked back on the door. "What are you doing back here?" he said. It didn't seem to get any more normal to see a rabbit talk. "Head out to the phone booth out by the highway. Go on, you'll see. It won't work." Was this how Alice felt? I figured I could ask him some questions. "How did you end up here?" The jackalope twitched his nose and shuddered. "Dreadful story involving a hodag and a coyote. Better not even bring it up." The hell is a hodag? "How long have you been here?" "Too long. Too long, but He paused, becoming rather distressed. "It's this place. I can't leave. I can't leave." "What do you think of the motel?" "It's a trap, of course," he said, agitated, but everything he said was like that. "Nothing else makes any sense, and trust me, I know traps." "Because you're a rabbit?" I asked. "Jackalope. But no, not because of that." "Rude." "What do you think of the other guests?" "Oh, they're all fools. Haven't you seen how much this costs them?" "Everyone is a fool?" I asked. "Okay, maybe not Dean, but only because he's a mastermind." I raised an eyebrow and he huffed. "You'll see." I didn't have any more questions to ask. That, and I wanted to get out of this room. I kept going down the hallway, which stretched back towards the highway, brightly lit all the way down. At 2:10, the woman sat by the open door, smoking. I sat down next to her, feet dangling off the railing before I asked, "Do you think this place is a trap?" She'd been doing her best to ignore me, but at my question she stilled. The smoke stopped curling and rose up straight. "Where'd you hear that?" she asked, almost nonchalant. The smoke kept smoking upwards. "The guy in 201. He's a rabbit. Well, a jackalope. And he thinks this place is a trap." She stayed still for a moment before shifting, smoke trailing in her wake. She opened up her pack of Marlboros with a snap of her nail and knocked one out in front of me. "Have a smoke." I took the cigarette. She lit it. I took a tentative drag. It went down, smooth and easy, even though I'd never done it before. My mom would kill me if she saw me now. The smoking woman seemed pleased as she turned back out into the night. "Trap, you say?" "Maybe. It certainly snagged us, but you don't have to offer people a world to tempt them. They'd sell their souls for a lot less. A quiet night, a pack of smokes." She took a long, long drag. "Some people don't want to leave the cage, though. You gotta remember that, too." "Do you?" This time I knew she was looking at me. Her whole body turned and she shook her head. "Does it look like the world has anything left for me?" I walked down to our room. The TV was playing some kind of strange infomercial when I walked in. It seemed to be an infomercial for a DVD of infomercials. Collector's edition, too. Becky sat lounging in bed, enraptured. I admit, it was hard to look away, but somehow we managed. "No more pushing daisies?" I asked, taking a seat by her. They were doing a knife demonstration, one knife cutting a smaller, inferior knife. That was always my favorite. "Not yet. They said it'd come back on tomorrow like a marathon, but this is fine too. I even changed it sooner so I didn't get spoiled. It's gonna be great." She leaned back, stretching out onto the sheets. She looked good, refreshed. "You gonna stick around? I think they might do the can slicing demo next." I just came by to get some quarters, even though the temptation of the infomercial was strong. It was so tempting to just sit with Becky like we had before, like we might never do again. "Getting something from the vending machine? I could use a soda," Becky said. I shook my head. "A phone booth, actually. Supposedly there's one out in the middle of the desert." "Really?" "Yeah. Come with me?" It would be nice if she did. I'd like some company out by the lonely highway. Becky sighed, looking at me, the door, and the TV. "You don't have to," I said, already heading for my bag. No, of course I'll go." She pulled on her hoodie, 2 sizes too big, and that was that. "I'll meet you outside, okay?" "Okay." I walked back down to the stairs, to the lobby, and then to the parking lot. I walked up to Dean, who looked so at home here, leaning on his motorcycle under the cactus bloom. "Hey, Dean," I said, sitting down next to him. "Do you think this place is a trap?" "Nah, the universe doesn't care that much," he said. "I know what a trap looks like in this. This isn't even temptation. Frankly, if that's what was going for, then it should be ashamed of itself." "Well, we want to stay," I said. "Doesn't that count for something?" "Not really. Is the beach a trap if you want to stay there? Is the forest? Some things just are." The highway stretched out east, back towards Houston, and the phone booth that we didn't see on the way. "Hey, not leaving without me, are you?" Becky said, coming down from the parking lot. Dean waved at her as she walked by. "No," I said. I had been. To be honest, I hadn't really expected her to come, but I'm glad she was here. She looped her arm in mine. Maybe I'd been a little transparent in my disbelief. "There, now let's go." So we walked out into the desert, staying on the uneven gravel by the side of the road. She kept looking back at the motel. not forward to where the phone booth might be, but back towards the bright blue neon that still managed to light up our path. Is everything okay? I asked. She shrugged. Just not sure about this. Why are you heading out here anyway? What good would it do to call anyone? I tried to dangle with the answer. I wasn't sure about this, about anything, but I wanted to be sure. I wanted to be sure about something, so I might as well try to be sure about this. I just want to know if it works. I mean, aren't you worried about this place? What if we're stuck here? I asked. Becky shrugged. I don't know. Who would we even call anyway? We could call my parents, I said. Becky frowned. I guess, but what would we tell them? Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. I found a magical motel and we're not going to Santa Monica? Yeah, something like that. Maybe they'd be able to help. They'd just try to convince you to leave. That, and maybe they'd think you were crazy. Or doing drugs. She wiggled her fingers in a way that did not at all resemble doing drugs. I really don't think they'd think that. They'd be confused, sure, but who wouldn't be? But I don't think they'd jump that far. Then again, they were pretty happy I was staying home in Houston. I can't imagine they'd be receptive of the idea of me staying here. We could call Aaron, I said. We can't. It's too late. I looked at her, eyebrow raised. This was the girl who almost scheduled her 1 a.m. calls to her boyfriends. It's complicated, all right, Becky said, her arm tightening around mine. Things have been rough. Things were fine in the car. Things had been fine this whole trip. She breathed out. Things haven't been fine since we got our acceptance letters. I don't know what's coming next, but whatever it is, it probably wouldn't help to wake him up. Becky and Aaron had seemed solid, like the asphalt under our feet. Been a fact since freshman year. It wasn't even my relationship, but it still felt like another loss. I'm sure it'll work out. You guys have been together forever. I'm sure if you just talk about it, which was exactly the wrong thing to say. Talk? That can't fix things, Becky scoffed. Besides, it's funny coming from you. What's that supposed to mean? I said. Becky looked out into the desert. Well, you're not exactly great at talking about relationships, you know. I tightened my hand on her arm. Just because I haven't had a boyfriend, she laughed. What? What are you talking about? Mari, we all know about your crush on Lex. I do not have a crush on Lex. I lied. It was a comfortable one, well-formed and well-suited to my tongue. Becky went on as if she hadn't listened to me. She doesn't know, of course, but really you aren't one to bring up talking about feelings when you can't even tell Lex how you feel. Wouldn't matter if I told her, I said, kicking a rock onto the highway. Lex was leaving, Becky was leaving, everyone was leaving me behind, and soon their opinions wouldn't matter anymore. Of course it would matter, she said. At the very least, you could have come out to us. I get it. It's hard, but we wouldn't have thought differently of you. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, because you're really proving that now. Becky bristled. I felt it, like a current through our linked arms. I'm not... Mari, this isn't like that. I don't care that you're a lesbian, and neither would Lex, but you never told us. You never tell us anything. I'm not. Don't lie to my face, Mari. She broke away. We stopped walking, standing in the middle of the highway. I felt tired. I could try to explain, but would it work? How could she understand me coming from where she was? She'd had the perfect boyfriend her whole life, and this was only the first little hiccup. How could she understand? I'm not lying. It's just complicated, I sighed. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, you know. You'd want to know and dissect, and I don't even understand it. It's not hard, Mari, Becky said, arms wide and angry. Just say, Becky, I think I'm gay. But I'm not, I said softly. I don't know what I am. Bisexual, maybe? I don't know. Why does it even matter to you anyway? I'm your friend. I'm supposed to know this stuff, she said. Yeah, like I'm supposed to know that you and Aaron having problems? It's different, she muttered. I swallowed, shaking my head. Why? 'Cause you're leaving? I don't need to know anymore 'cause you're leaving? Is that it? No, Becky said, quickly. Too quickly? I don't know. I just didn't want to think about it. "Welcome to the party," I said, voice dead and tired. Becky took a step towards me, and then another. I took a step back. "Let's just find the phone booth, okay?" I felt tired, drained. "Okay," she said. "Whatever you want, Mari. We have time to talk about it whenever we're ready." She took another step forward. I let her. Her arm looped in mine and we began to walk, in sync. Quiet. We didn't say anything until we saw a street light that wasn't there before light up, revealing a phone booth that definitely hadn't been there before. The phone booth was a dusty red, clean if not for the wear of sitting by the highway. There was no graffiti on the glass. The only mark on the phone was the remnants of a ripped-up sticker, unrecognizable. Etched above the coin slot was the request for 25 cents. I had 1 quarter. I held it out to Becky. Becky looked at me and then at the quarter. "What? You need this more than I do. You actually have someone to talk to on the outside," I said. Becky looked back at the impossible phone booth, here in the middle of nowhere, then back at the quarter. She seemed more frightened of the quarter than of anything else we'd seen tonight. "You're the one who said talking is good," I reminded her. She took a breath, looking at the disc. "And you'll talk to Lex?" "I'll think about it," I promised, and I would. Just maybe not tonight. Just maybe not ever. Who knew? She nodded and took the quarter in her hand. "Do you want me to stay?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, This is something I should do alone." I should have felt worse, leaving her out in the middle of the desert, in the light of a lonely street lamp, at a phone booth that shouldn't exist. But like everything in this place, it just felt like the right side of wrong. I looked back a few times, peering at her through the tinted glass. She was hunched over, crying. I could tell even if I couldn't see her tears. I guess the jackalope was wrong. The phone did work. And that brings us to a great stopping point as our show here draws to a close. This story is good, dude. I don't think I played through this whenever I first found this. I'm not lying, like 10 years ago, maybe longer ago. I don't remember that story arc. I don't think I ever got that outcome in the conversation and those choices. I love doing story games and story-based stuff like this, specifically because you do get different outlines. Whenever these were books, I would read through every single possible ending, which means I would read a book that was like, I don't know, like say 200 pages long, enough times that it would take me as long as a book that was 1,000 pages long. But I remember with this one, I didn't go back and see the other options because I wanted to come back and like go back through it. And then I forgot about it. I forgot it existed. I had originally been like, I'll come back next year. You know, it'll be enough time for me to like get a fresh perspective on it and see if I've changed. And right now I have no memory of it. I have no idea what choices I made before. So now we're actually getting that. Like for them, I remember the jackalope. I remember reading about the jackalope, like gave me that like sense of like the first time I read it, and I thought it was so cool. I genuinely think that is one of the coolest things that I've ever encountered in anything that I've ever read, which is amazing because it's kind of rare to get that feeling. I feel like I've mentioned this on the podcast before. You get a lot of stories that feel familiar, and kind of like start to be identifiable as parts of other stories, but this is one that I feel like is truly unique. Also, there needs to be more jackalopes in media. I feel like we don't encounter jackalopes enough. What's up with that? A rabbit with antlers, dude? That's crazy. And you know what's funny? I didn't realize they weren't real. I felt like jackalope was such a normal creature to exist. I thought jackalopes were real up until this. And whenever she's like, well, what is a hall dog or whatever? I looked up like, oh, well, maybe that's a real thing. And obviously it's not. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, jackalopes are real, right? And then I looked up jackalopes and jackalopes aren't real. And that's kind of earth-shattering to me because I swear I always thought jackalopes were real. But in any case, thanks so much for hanging out with me for episode 98 of the podcast. We're almost on episode 100. Like I said, we have to come up with something really cool and really special and really exciting. But without further ado, I think we have reached that part of the night. I am very excited. I'll try to come back next week, same time, same channel, etc. There is a chance, though, that I might be traveling. Who knows? I'm not sure what my plans entail for the next couple of weeks. Doing a lot of catching up, doing a lot of starting new. So we'll see. In any case, keep up on social media and Discord, etc., 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 to figure out when the next episode is. And if it doesn't show up, that means I didn't record. But it will be there the following week because I have no excuse then. But for podKast with a K, I'm your host, Carla with a K, signing off. I now return you to your regularly scheduled program and or evening with a brand new song by Bastille called Save My Soul. If you know me, you know I love Bastille, one of my favorite bands since, 2013 or so. And this new song is amazing. So here is that. Have a fantastic night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.